now it's time for our weekend recap. First up is the fight between Michael Hunter and Sergey Kuzmin, and this fight worked out more or less how I expected. I did have Michael Hunter winning the fight, but I had him winning by way of late knockout or technical knockout against Kuzmin, who really hadn't shown me much up until this point. He just didn't make me a believer. He didn't convince me that he could win this fight. And Michael Hunter showed many of the virtues I described in my prediction video, that, he's got athleticism, he's got mobility, he's got good straight punches upstairs and downstairs, decent power, not the most concussive puncher, but respectable enough that you're not just going to walk through him. You're not just going to walk through this guy, you're just not going to walk through his punches. Michael Hunter did manage to score a knockdown in the 5th round against Sergey Kuzmin. Sergey Kuzmin, who was the noticeably bigger man in the ring. So while the fight may not have worked out exactly as I predicted, I was right to pick Michael Hunter to win that thing. And in all honesty, my parting thoughts on the fight, what I was left thinking the most
during and after
as the fight wore on and after it was over was that, Michael Hunter, he really does have to be careful, because in spite of Sergey Kuzmin not having Michael's athleticism, his mobility, his straight punches, the snap in those punches, in spite of Sergey not having these things and bringing them to the table, when they were in the pocket, when the guys were trading, it was there where Sergey Kuzmin appeared to be a bit of a threat to Michael Hunter. That so long as Michael Hunter's moving around the ring, fighting behind his jab, and boxing his way to a decision, he's got the fight in the bag. But if you go trading left hooks with a guy this size in the pocket, you're running some big risks there. Because even though Sergey's not that fast,
he's not.
He doesn't have the fastest feet or the fastest hands. I mean, he's just not a fast guy. He's not. But at that range, in the pocket, he really doesn't need to be. He doesn't need to be a fast guy. And it's there where Michael Hunter just so happens to be the most susceptible, that in the pocket, he's got to be wary of trading punches in the pocket with these kinds of guys. Because I'll tell you something, if it's an Alexander Povetkin, if it's a Dillian Wayne, if it's a Jarrell Miller, it could turn out to be a very different night, a very different situation for the likes of Michael Hunter, that if this guy is to have any continued success in this division, it's going to be by being more of a moving target, a long-distance kind of guy, as opposed to a slugger. I just don't like Michael's odds in the pocket against some of the more aggressive fighters the division has to offer, that his virtues happen to be mobility, being fleet of foot, throwing good straight punches from the outside. These are his keys to success. But if he's not careful, if he becomes a slave to the moment and he allows himself to be drawn into a war, it could be a very different situation. Essentially what it means is that given Michael Hunter's particular set of physical dimensions and his characteristics as a fighter, he'd be better off being a long-distance guy, moving target guy, elusive guy, but not a guy who goes in there trading punches, not in today's heavyweight division, because what normalcy means in today's heavyweight division is guys anywhere from 6'5" to 6'8". The kind of guys that are going to have a lot of size on Michael Hunter. The kind of guys who, if you're in the phone booth with these kinds of guys, they could get through with a sneaky left hook downstairs or up top. At that range, those big lumbering lummoxes, they don't need to be that fast. So what Michael Hunter's got to work to do is fight on the fly and fight on the outside. You're already not that concussive a puncher, so attempting to win a fight through strength of arms, through being a dog, that'd just be counterintuitive. His best bet to have continued success in the heavyweight division would have to be through his boxing as opposed to brawling or something along those lines. Nevertheless, it is a test that Michael Hunter has passed, and he gets to move on from this, take into account how he looked out there, how he felt out there, and what else the division has to offer, and strategize based on those things. Build upon that. So congratulations to Michael Hunter for getting through this fight, passing this test, but I will say that my closing thoughts as far as this fight and what the future holds for Michael is that the heavyweight division has a lot more to offer in terms of aggressive punches than the likes of a Sergey Kuzmin. So they're going to have to be mindful of that moving forward if they are to continue to have success. We then come to what was arguably the best fight on the entire card, a fight that many people were saying should have been the main event because, in all honesty, many of the tickets sold were sold to see these two fighters in action. I'm talking about the fight between Amanda Serrano and Heather Hardy. Let's talk about this thing. This worked out almost exactly as I predicted. It's everything I imagined it would be. That Heather Hardy's going to go out there. She's going to show a lot of heart, a lot of grit, a lot of determination, true fighting spirit. But overall, she is just out gun. She's facing an opponent that is quicker to the draw and has the bigger guns, and there is very little that Heather Hardy can do about that in terms of offense. Defensively, she can angle her upper body away from the shots, use her legs to try to navigate that ring, take something off those punches. That defensively, maybe Heather Hardy can buy herself some time, maybe she can stay in the fight, but in terms of offense, she's got nothing for Amanda. And this is what I meant when I said in my prediction video that it's not Heather Hardy's defense that worries me so much as her offense, that she's been winning fights by being the more accurate puncher in the exchange. But in this situation, what she's going to find is Amanda is simply too sharp and too quick, and she's got all the tools to not only beat her to the punch, but the kind of concussive power to where she can assert herself very quickly. You know, we saw when the first punches start to land for Amanda Serrano, Heather Hardy came very close to being knocked the fuck out. That was in the opening rounds. It's a wonder that she managed to last as long as she did. That's true grit, true fighting spirit. But rest assured, this is what I was describing. That Heather Hardy cannot go blow for blow with Amanda Serrano the way she went blow for blow with Shelly Vincent. It's not gonna work. Not with this particular fighter. Because this fighter, she's hurting you up top. She's hurting you downstairs. It's taking a physical toll on you. It's sapping your energy reserves. That even if you can stay in this fight, you are getting worn out. And while you're getting worn out, your technique is being compromised. You're throwing arm punches. You're slapping with your hooks. There's not enough mustard on those shots, even when they do get through. There's not enough mustard on them to get Amanda Serrano's respect. And in this fight, Amanda Serrano was relentless, walking Heather Hardy down, forcing her to retreat, forcing her to battle back at times. You know, Heather Hardy tried it. She tried to box off the back foot, set up some traps, maybe land a counter shot here and there, but none of this worked to deter Amanda Serrano. We look over at Amanda Serrano and make the assessment of her performance, and I have to say that she looked sensational. She looked fan-fucking-tastic out there. It's important to note that, you know, Amanda Serrano at this weight, she really is a devastating puncher. You gotta realize that. I mean, if you saw the fight, if you saw the opening rounds, you could immediately see what kind of power Amanda Serrano has at this weight. And what's noteworthy about the performance is that Amanda never once compromised her defense for offense. That's noteworthy, and here's why. A lot of times you get a fighter with a real big punch, and sometimes they fall in love with it. So much so that they start compromising defense for offense. So they start walking into shots, taking punishment that they don't need to take because they figure that they're just one punch away from getting their opponent out of there. Well, in the case of Amanda Serrano, she didn't make that mistake. She didn't take any unnecessary punches. She stayed dominant but effective at the same time. Relentless pressure through
solid fundamentals,
effective boxing, effective aggression, without compromising defense for offense. That's noteworthy. It's noteworthy because in many ways Heather Hardy is a better opponent than anyone that she's faced in recent memory, the last couple of fights. Heather's a cut above the girls that Amanda's been fighting. You know, Amanda's quality of competition as of late, it's been pedestrian at best. And what's noteworthy about this performance is that there were no breaks in character. Amanda was just as dominant with Heather as she was with Eva Voraberger, as she was with Yamila Reynoso. No breaks in character. She stayed the same dominant and effective fighter. Fantastic performance. You look at Amanda Serrano's quality of punches, whether it was straight shots up top, downstairs, compact hooks so tight there's not much space for you to sneak something in there. You think about her footwork and how she was always in the prime position to land a shot. She was always in a power position. That denotes understanding of one's own distance, one's own range, one's own sweet spot, and how Amanda Serrano was able to maintain this throughout the full course of the fight while applying relentless pressure. Ladies and gentlemen, that denotes maturity as a fighter. This is very much a complete and balanced fighter. So I think it was a great showing for Amanda Serrano, but overall, I think that both girls won a lot of fans with this fight. I mean, a lot of people scoff at the idea that two girls can go out there and put on this caliber of a performance, and to those people, I advise them to take stock of these fighters, take stock of this fight, take stock of the courage that Heather Hardy exhibited. She approached this fight as an underdog, you know. There were no illusions ahead of this fight as far as what could happen to Heather Hardy, but she chose to take it on anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, if that's not fighting spirit, I don't know what is. You look over at Amanda Serrano, and you wonder if it's been all smoke and mirrors, opportunistic opponent choices. You wonder about these things, but this was an undefeated champion that she trounced, that she pounded on for a full 10 rounds. So I have to say that both girls did themselves a great service with this performance. I think that both girls won themselves a lot of fans with this fight, but moving forward, now that Amanda Serrano is the WBO Super Featherweight Champion, what's next? Are we going to get to see that Katie Taylor fight or not? And I've expressed this many times that I'm not sold that that's going to be the next fight for Katie Taylor or Amanda Serrano, because in all honesty, Katie's got a full plate, and she's still the undisputed champion, so that comes with responsibilities. Responsibilities that may see her fighting someone else instead of the winner of this fight. So what should Amanda do in this situation? I'll tell you what they should do. I'll tell you what the next fight should be on DAZN. Amanda Serrano in a unification fight against Jelena Marjanovic. You asked me why I keep bringing up this fighter's name. Well, maybe you're not familiar with Jelena, but if you want to see a fighter who's got the kind of punching power that Amanda's got, and the kind of boxing acumen that Amanda's got, but the same toughness and grit, the same champion's heart that Heather Hardy has, ladies and gentlemen, that's Jelena Marjanovic. That's where you get that package. Jelena's only drawback ahead of a fight with Amanda Serrano is that she's in Heather's age group. Jelena is approaching 40. She is an aging fighter, but for what it's worth, she's still competing at the elite level. She is still a unified champion, the only unified champion at this weight. So you ask me what makes sense, that if the Taylor fight can't be next, then what makes sense? I'll tell you what doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for Amanda to cross over to MMA after a fight like this in the sport of boxing. Doesn't make sense to allow that buzz to dissipate, that memory to become a distant memory of how she looked in this fight. It doesn't make sense for her to do that. What does make sense is to have that unification fight. That if Taylor can't be next, that's okay. This division, featherweight, it's got something to offer Amanda Serrano, and that's a fight with Jelena Marjanovic, who's got the punching power and boxing acumen of Amanda with the toughness, grit, and heart of Heather Hardy. So let's see if it happens that way. It was a great fight. It was everything I thought it would be. It lived up to my expectations, and congratulations to both fighters for putting on a fantastic show. We then come to the fight between Devin Haney and Abdullaev, a WBC final eliminator that would see the winner of the fight becoming the WBC's mandatory challenger, the mandatory challenger to Vasyl Lomachenko's green belt. I'll be honest when I say that this fight didn't have the competitive element, the intrigue that the aforementioned fights had. I didn't give Abdullaev a shot in the dark of doing anything with Devin Haney other than getting beaten up by Devin Haney, and that's what we saw. If we're going to talk fight mechanics, right? This fight didn't offer us too much to reflect upon, except one interesting tidbit given recent events, and that's how Devin Haney, like a lot of other fighters, he does come out in that Philly shell defense. He does come out with that guard. He does start off that way. But why does Devin Haney find more success and establish more dominance than some other fighters that do the same thing? And I'll tell you what it is, folks. It's the jab. Devin Haney establishes it earlier than a Teofimo Lopez, earlier than an Anthony Yarde. That's the difference, that Devin Haney establishes that laser jab and does a lot of business with it very early in a fight. So in doing so, he effectively establishes his range, his distance, while simultaneously disarming the other guy. It's that much harder to come through the front door and try to land some kind of, big right hand. It's a lot harder to do that when you've got to try to work your way around this laser jab. It's quick, it's sharp, it's efficient, it's effective. And because Devin Haney establishes this punch so early in a fight, it opens a lot of other doors, yeah, but it also prevents certain things from happening. Prevents a guy from getting a little bit too antsy, a little bit too froggy. He's trying it, It prevents those kinds of situations from happening because Devin Haney is establishing control very early in the fight. I mean, look, I could sit here and talk about how this kid's athleticism is through the roof. He's sharp, his footwork, his movements, his upper body angles, the way he gets out of the way of a punch, He's got so many different ways of doing all these things. But what really caught my attention, what I really left the fight reflecting upon, is how Devin Haney can have success in that Philly shell defense because he doesn't wait to react to what the other guy is doing. He establishes dominance early with the jab. That's the difference. That's why, we saw Masayoshi Nakatani land some very interesting shots on Teofimo Lopez. We saw what happened to Anthony Yarde at the hands of Sergey Kovalev. These are all guys that come out with that same guard. But the difference between them and Devin is Devin establishes dominance early, and that's the most I can reflect upon, because as far as how the fight went, I figured Devin Haney's gonna blow this guy out of the water. Now moving forward, I'll tell you what I told you before. Devin Haney, as talented as he is, the bright future that this kid's got, beating Abdullaev in the way that I expected him to. Beating him, however, does not communicate to me that he's ready for Vasyl Lomachenko. Oh, I know that he called him out. He's supposed to do that. He's a young fighter. He's a hungry young fighter. And I admire his ambition. I admire his passion. But overall, beating this guy don't tell me that Devin's ready for that fight. It don't. And the thing is, regardless of what I think, regardless of what you think, in all honesty, Vasyl Lomachenko has bigger fish to fry than his mandatories. He's pursuing yet another unification fight. And in all likelihood, he's going to end up facing the winner of Teofimo Lopez versus Richard Commey. That's the reality of things, isn't it? So whether Devin wants it or not, or whether he wants he's got a precedence for it or not, whether you and I think he's ready for it or not, one way or another, he's going to have to wait. Devin Haney's not clout chasing Vasyl Lomachenko by name dropping him. He's not one of those kinds of fighters. He's not one of those kinds of people. He is actively lining himself up for the fight. He is now his mandatory challenger. So he means business. He truly believes that is a fight that he can win. And that's more ambition than we've seen from the likes of a Gervonta Davis. And that guy's supposed to be some kind of two-time champion, my fucking ass. Devin Haney, a contender, is showing more determination than he is. But the reality of it really is that there are other things that may come to pass before we see that fight, and they actually favor Devin Haney. They give him the chance to garner more professional experience, iron out some wrinkles, sharpen what tools he's already got. So I'm just excited, just as excited at the proposition of that fight as you guys are, but I'm realistic, I'm being honest. I don't expect that to be the next fight we see either Devin Haney or Vasyl Lomachenko in. It's just the reality of things.